Friends, I know the House of Justice is longing for a wave of teaching. We have the plans, we have our collective tasks set before us, we have agencies, we have appointees who are able to tell us all about that. In moving around in the country and in other countries as well, I find that it's helpful for all of us to recall that we have two kinds of responsibilities in the cause. We have individual responsibilities and we have collective responsibilities. I tend to see, traveling around, some of the friends are trying to derive what they should be deriving from their individual responsibilities from the collective responsibilities. And then you find people with a bit of a burnout that say, I'm not going to another cycle of growth again, and something of the sort, And not to make a negative remark, but you're all familiar with this process, I'm sure, because we've been facing the challenges of initiating entryway troops in this country now for 25 years. Over and above our collective responsibilities, which derive from the Lesser Covenant and from the House of Justice describing the stages that are unfolding in the process of the carrying out of the divine plan, we have the immediate responsibility of what is our first duty as a Baha'i, a first duty as a person, if you will. Interestingly enough, the Akdas opens with the recognition of the manifestation of God. The first duty of anybody in this planet is to recognize the manifestation of God. Then he calls upon those of us that have recognized it to live according to his teachings, and he places a high priority on our teaching of the faith itself. Well, that has a two-stage process, if I think we will all recall. He says that you must arise and teach the faith. But before all things, he said, you must teach yourself. You must teach yourself the content of the revelation, the meaning of the revelation. You must draw close to Baha'u'llah. And if you do so, he says, your words will take effect in the hearts of your listeners. Otherwise, he said, there will be no effect whatever. He says, it's not a direct quote, but there's several tablets where he says exactly that. It calls us to a certain earnestness of reflection about ourselves and our relationship with the writings. And I want to lead us through a few passages from the text that maybe suggest to us how can we quicken this process in ourselves? How can we arrive at, let's say, a fresh stage of excitement about propagating the cause leading up to this bicentenary of the birth of the Bab that the House has indicated is a period when we should be accelerating everything. I mean, they've asked for, Herculean efforts. Abdu'l-Baha, in the sense in the divine plan where he tells us that you must increase your efforts 1,000-fold. Now, that sounds more like something that goes with the passage of a gnat can become an eagle and a drop can become an ocean. I mean, this is a 1,000-fold increase that's beyond our capacity unless we become willing elements for the transformation that he promises will take place if we arise and propagate the cause and teach the cause. Now, in our collective activity, we have organized times and things to do, but our individual responsibility comes from the divine plan and from the will and testament of Abdu'l-Baha. These are among the final words of Abdu'l-Baha to the friends everywhere. It is incumbent upon all the friends and loved ones, one and all, to bestir themselves and arise with heart and soul and in one accord to diffuse the sweet savors of God, to teach his cause and to promote his faith. It behooveth thee not to rest for a moment, neither to seek peace or repose. In a tablet that supplements this thought, he says, when the friends do not endeavor to spread the message, they fail to remember God befittingly and will not witness the tokens of assistance and confirmation from the Abha kingdom, nor comprehend the divine mysteries. Again, from a tablet of Abdu'l-Baha. Should a Baha'i refrain from being fully, vigorously, and wholeheartedly involved in the teaching work, he will undoubtedly be deprived of the blessings of the Abha kingdom. We have to ask ourselves, have we lost sight of that or have we never attained it? If we want to create this acceleration in the community and attract new souls, all of the processes of the 5-year plans that we've been carrying out depend on new recruits, depend on human resources. How many times are we going to go ourselves over and over the courses of the Ruhi course? It's for bringing new people through the knowledge of the cause. So we have to give sufficient time at our own individual level to attracting new souls. And I think that what I'm hearing in different places is people are not too prepared to talk about the faith like to give a introductory talk to friends. We've been encouraged to do things together and accompany each other and so on. And somehow we've lost sight of the need to be able to speak clearly and give the message of the faith in such a way that people will be attracted and interested and will go into the institute process and take part in the other activities of the college. One of the early friends in his time asked Abdu'l-Baha how she could better her teaching work, how she could improve her teaching work. Interestingly enough, he said that in order to improve your teaching work, you must live the life. Live the life. Live the life 3 times. In order to live the life, he says, you have to acquire thirst for spirituality. Thirst for spirituality, he says, comes from study of the writings on immortality, on life after death. Because that's the thing that sets us wondering what's going to happen to us after we pass away. We're supposed to obey the teaching in order that we go to the next side feeling able to survive there, so to speak. If the teaching work is the source of divine confirmations, is the source of our receiving the bounty of the Holy Spirit, which is what develops and makes our soul grow, it nourishes our soul, so to speak. If we don't receive that, we don't grow spiritually. We may grow in activity, but that's not the same thing. God will surely bless us and reward us for all our efforts. But the divine confirmations, this power of the kingdom which accompanies the teaching of the faith, is central. Now, yes, we want the cause to grow. But Abdu'l-Baha says without some prospect of gain, the self-interest is so seated in man that he won't make a move. So I'm trying to sharpen a point here tonight for all of us, myself included, of course, that if we don't teach, we're not going to move forward spiritually. And then when Abdu'l-Baha says it's the greatest gift of God, he says that because it's essential for our spiritual well-being and our condition in the world to come. And the teacher gets a whole lot more out of it than the recipient of the message. The institute process is to teach us essential verities of the cause. It was established because there was no deepening of the new masses of people coming into the faith. We needed some program that would ground them in the faith. It was not made for non-Baha'is. It was for Baha'is. Now, there's been modification in a sense, and now non-Baha'is are in it. No letter ever said no study classes. No letter ever said no firesides. And no letter ever said no intercommunity classes. And I saw the House of Justice. I was there on a short visit a year and a half ago, and I had the honor and pleasure of meeting with the House itself. And they said, we've mentioned the word firesides more often in the last 6 months than in the previous 30 years. And there's no hesitation about it. Let the friends go forward with everything they can, with study classes, with the institute process, with firesides, and teach the faith of God to new people. Because as much as we have tried to focus on the idea of preparing ourselves for mass enrollment, for the entry by troops, there hasn't been a whole lot of it. I hope that we will all perhaps consider, just as a suggestion to you, that we renew our own understanding of the covenant we have with Baha'u'llah, that we're obeying the House of Justice because Baha'u'llah came, not because it's an end in itself. We must always remember that. So our obedience to everything, our adherence to the covenant, comes from absorbing Baha'u'llah's teachings and putting them in action in ourselves. Baha'u'llah commands all of us to teach the faith. He lays the duty of spreading the cause of God. He's forbidden clergy. He's prohibited clergy in the Baha'i faith. So who's going to teach the faith? Now, it's to us, but then each one according to their ability and capacity. But he says, before all else, you must teach the cause of God to your own self. Teach the cause to the point where you begin to live according to the teachings of the faith. He said, when you transform your own character, then after that, your words will take effect in the hearts of the listeners. Otherwise, he says, nothing will happen. So sometimes when I hear the Baha'is, sometimes we say, oh, it's so hard to teach. I try to teach, but nobody's interested. And I think to myself, probably we're not interested enough. We're not rooted in it enough. We're not centered in it enough. It's not the burning reason that we're alive. And friends, if you look around you, as you know, in this world, we really need the Baha'is to be focusing on what Baha'u'llah is asking us to do and carrying out the guidance of the House of Justice. And that means that teaching has to become the burning issue of our life. From the time we open our eyes in the morning, as Mr. Sears used to say, we should pray, "Oh, Baha'u'llah, let me find waiting souls today." You know, once in a while we've all, in our lives perhaps, run across a waiting soul, somebody that's waiting to hear about the faith, somebody that actually looks at us and says, "Where have you been? Why haven't you told me about this before? Why are you hiding this?" He's promised that one soul that really understands the faith and has breathed the life of the teachings is able to change a whole country, can cause a continent to change. Such a power that Baha'u'llah is ready to channel through those that center themselves in the love of God and in this desire to carry forward the mission of Baha'u'llah. I think we should take hope, and we should try to deepen ourselves with regard to placing our trust in Baha'u'llah. There's a marvelous letter from Shoghi Effendi. He describes the nature of sacrifice. He says there's 3 areas that the Baha'is need to be aware of to sacrifice. The first area, he said, is financial. You'll remember seeing writings where he says that to the degree that we sacrifice in contribution to the faith is the sign of how much we believe in it. First sacrifice, financial. Then he said the second one, very difficult one, is the sacrifice of our time. We're called upon to spend time doing things that when we want to measure them and about, never mind, are they fun or interesting? They're onerous. We're sitting in committee meetings or in assembly meetings where people don't understand the faith well enough to make good sense out of the consultation. And you feel at the end of the evening, how have I spent my time, Then he says the third one, which is even more surprising. He said it's the sacrifice of person, of your person, of your idea of who you are and what you want to do in life, that you have to give up some of. You have to cut back. But the role that he's calling to you is much better than anything you could design for yourself. That's the other point. We don't realize that as these sacrifices become more second nature in us, they're not sacrifices anymore. You hear people say, "Well, it's no sacrifice. It makes me happy, I'm happy to do that." I mean, how exciting it is when you are able to convey something of the teachings of the faith to a person that responds positively and gets excited. It's like it renews your whole reason for being. These challenges, it makes us think again, what's going to be the fruit of our existence? The Bab says, the paradise that you go to is constructed of your good deeds. Okay, now we know the good deeds aren't ours in any case, but if we've been the channel of, if we've been able to act on behalf in accord with the teaching to some degree, then that creates the conditions in which we will reside on the other side. In the last 2 years of his life, Shoghi Effendi wrote through his secretary several times about what were the keys to success, the steps that the Baha'is needed to follow in order to be effective in teaching. The beloved guardian has stressed over and over again that to effectively teach the faith, the individual must study deeply the divine word, imbibe its life-giving waters, and feast upon its glorious teachings. He should then meditate on the import of the word and, finding its spiritual depths, pray for guidance and assistance. But most important after prayer is action. After one has prayed and meditated, he must arise
relying fully on the guidance and confirmation of Baha'u'llah. To teach his faith, perseverance in action is essential, just as wisdom and audacity are necessary for effective teaching. The individual must sacrifice all things to this great goal, and then the victories will be won. Success will crown the efforts of the Friends on the home front. When they meditate on the teachings, pray fervently for divine confirmations for their work. Study the teachings so they may carry their spirit to the seeker, and then act and, above all, persevere in action. When these steps are followed and the teaching work carried on sacrificially and with devoted enthusiasm, the faith will spread rapidly. Achieved. Pretty clear picture he's giving us here, you know. Prayer, meditation, study of the writings, and then act. And then act. Now we act and we run out of fuel because we're not, I don't want to say you're that way, but I have to be careful. If I don't load in studying the writings and trying to take the inspiration that comes from the hidden words and from the gleanings and from the Agon, if I don't not taking that in on a fairly regular basis, I run out of fuel. And I wish you all the best in your study, in your meditation, in your prayerful life, and in your service to the cause of God. And I hope I see you again sometime in the future.